Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Okay, well, it's been a very busy morning, and I love it. But I have something special for you. You know, we love books of the month and books and authors. And we had a special one for this month in July. Monty Helfgott. Monty is he's more than just a writer of these books. He's got quite a history, but I have to just tell you, I'm sitting with, we featured book number 1 called The Silence, and I'm sitting with book number 2 and book number 3. But I hope when you go to the Boomer Expo that you will stop by the book review booth and you'll see the book Silence. It's really exciting. I told him, I said, I think someone's going to find you and make this into it could be a mini series, it could be a movie. I don't know what it's going to be. So welcome to our show, Monty.
Thank you very much, Anita.
Right. So our guest really is, and the book he calls it a paranormal historical thriller. What does that mean?
Well, it combines all three. Paranormal meaning mystical, meaning that there are unusual events that drive people with perhaps some special mystical powers. And that is the main character in book number 1, which is John Mackenzie, who really doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know that he really is someone who has tremendous paranormal powers, but he knows nothing about where he came from, doesn't know his parents. He's living in New York City. He's a multi-millionaire or billionaire. He's a gemologist. And he begins to find his paranormal connection when he goes to the New York City Museum of Judaic History, and there are 2 archaeological relics that he picks up, and this connection begins, and he then moves forward on a worldwide quest to find out who he really is. And so that's the paranormal. The historical, there's a lot of historical aspects in the book, which I researched. I did my homework not only on the internet, but I went around the world to find out, the flavor of the history behind him. I went to Eastern Europe, to the Ukraine, to Poland, to Germany, to France, and also to Israel. And the thriller is like there's world powers that want this mystical weapon that they believe he has. It's called a Staff of Light. The Russians are after him, the NKVD, the KGB, and then the CIA, because there's something that they want.
And of course, when you get to meet, hopefully you will meet Monty, he's not like that at all. I mean, he's not a CIA type, maybe inside, but I always wonder about getting into the head of authors. And were you a kid? Did you like things like this when you were a kid? Where did this all come from?
I did. I think that, authors write about people that they've met, but they also write about who they are. And if I could say, John Mackenzie is probably my alter ego. I call him a combination of James Bond and Indiana Jones, because he's great. He has great skills with guns. He has great powers in working with other people. He's in all kinds of different situations, which he finds ways of eluding. So that's kind of like maybe it's a little bit of me. So maybe I'm a little bit of John Mackenzie, which is book number 1.
I always said that, when I first read it, and I loved the name John Mackenzie. And I also feel that the title was so good. It's very hard to have a title that's one word, B.
Yeah,
silence.
Well,
but that was perfect, and the silence is the right word for that book. The
idea behind the title, The Silence, is that there are many forms of silence. And one of the forms is the silence between fathers and sons, because he doesn't know who he is. There's a great separation. And he is searching for his father, his ancestry. I mean, so many people today are looking for their ancestry. Just look at Ancestry.com. I mean, it's really big. But there are other forms of silence too. Silence in terms of secrets, silence in terms of things being held inside of you that maybe one day will come out. And there's also in the book the historical aspect of the silence of European Jewry to not see what was coming in the 1920s and 30s and then into the 40s. There was a denial. There was a silence. And that has to be pushed aside, and we have to look around and see all the things that are happening and be able to analyze them and maybe prognosticate some of them as well. So with the mystical power, maybe he is able, John Mackenzie and his the people that came before him, his father and his father's father, which is book 2 and book 3, they have these powers to prophesize the future. And as you read the book, you'll see this kind of going back and forth in time. There's a lot of time travel too, because John Mackenzie is able to time travel in the crystal vortex, so he can go back in time.
But also, he was very wealthy. That's a very important part. He reminds me, in a sense, you said 007, yes, but this guy was a real entrepreneur. So he had the money. Why don't you explain? To me, he's so real. It's funny. I can almost see him.
He was, first of all, he's 6'5", has blonde hair and a long ponytail in the back. And you say, well, you see, as you read the other parts of the trilogy, you find out why he's so tall and why he has long blonde hair. But he has these mystical powers to find the gems all over the world. And with the money, he is a great humanitarian. He helps the people who do the mourning, and he makes sure that they are not taken advantage of. So he's a real good guy, even though he's tremendously wealthy. But he is also the target of many people because with all of his money, he is he has upset the power structure, and the big power structure in the 1970s was the Soviet Union and the United States. So in the book, you'll see that he's caught in a power struggle. I call it these jaws that are after him.
So Monty, is history repeating itself?
I don't know. That's why I think
it did seem like. How did he know these things were going to happen?
I don't know. Maybe I know.
Oh, right.
Maybe I know. And I can tell you that there have been, Anita, a number of mystical, paranormal things that have happened to me while I was writing and after I finished the book.
No kidding.
And I if you want me to go into it very briefly.
Exciting.
Okay. I finished the book in about 2013, and I visited a psychic. And I went and I brought the book to her, and she took it in her hand, all 3 of the books, and she kept putting a palm on it and going one chapter after another. And she looked at me and she said, "How did you write this book? What was your inspiration?" I said, I did some research, that's true. But there are times I would sit in front of my computer, I wouldn't know what to write. But then it would begin to flow out of my brain. And she looked at me and she said, "You were guided." I said, "What? Guided?" "Yes," she said to me, "you were guided by a spirit. And that spirit helped you to complete this book." That was just the beginning. There are a number of other mystical things that have happened that I had no idea of the reality of it. Another one that was very interesting was that in book 1, the author goes into the Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem, and there's an exhibit of a hooded robe. And what was interesting with that was when I visited Jerusalem after the completion of the book, and I went to the Dead Sea Scroll, to the Dead Sea, and where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. In one of the caves, they actually found a slipper from one of the people that was involved in the writing of the Dead Sea Scrolls that had existed or lasted for 2,000 years, just like the hooded robe that I described in the museum. So I said, wow, that's interesting. The other thing is the people from the Dead that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, that was a splinter group that went there because they didn't like what was going on in Jerusalem with the high priest, etc. And they called themselves the Brotherhood of Light, and they carried around with them something called the Staff of Light. And if you can look, when you look on the front cover of book 1, you will see what the Staff of Light looks like. And I got it out of my head. But then I found out that in reality, the Brotherhood of Light, all of them carried around exactly what I described as the Staff of Light. Now, in my head, there was something mystical happened which gave me that perception. And so, there's some kind of mystical connection between myself and my writing, and that to me is very interesting and fascinating. In fact, this Monday I'm going to see a past life regressionist to kind of look at it and see, was I involved at all in some past life which enabled me to write some of these mystical events that occurred in all of my books. I don't know. I have my doctorate in education. I wrote an empirical dissertation. So there's a part of me that is very scientific, and then there's another part of me that's mystical. But of course, I'm a Gemini, so maybe I have two different parts. So I don't know, but I find it fascinating.
Monty, I'm loving, because I'm privileged to sit here with Monty. This is not television, this is radio. And I'm seeing his electrifying description as he's talking. He is like floating. It is so beautiful to find this. And that's why I love authors. Most authors are like you. You are but you especially, because as you said, you are very educated to begin with. Some people write books and it's not that. But you're an educated person. And you've also written 2 other books, all called The Silence, number 2 and number 3. So it's a trilogy. But it is fascinating. And I'm very much like you. I actually wouldn't have done it normally, but someone told me I should go to a channeler.
Yes.
Which I did. She lived in the western part of the United States. I mean, it was over the telephone. Didn't know me. No one knew anything about me. I still have that today, and that must have been 30 years ago. It is amazing what came through, because the other person speaking, it starts out, I don't know if you know about channeling, it starts out with a person speaking, and all of a sudden the voice completely changes because it's something that's come through that person.
That's right.
And that person was talking about me and I could not believe it. So I'm into what you're saying. You should go and follow this through, because it does sound like there is something that's guiding you. You don't know that. Maybe
what I wrote has something to do with my own past life. I'm not sure. And that some of these characters that I've created in the book has something to do with who I was. I mean, it might sound far-fetched.
Who knows?
But I don't take anything for granted, and I'm open enough to explore it further.
Well, it's interesting you talk about this, because I have always been, I'm not a religious person, and I've always been very much into what energy is, and we're all energy. Even you're in the form of what you are in our desk, everything's energy. So when my husband, who recently passed away about 5 months ago now, he loved butterflies, and I don't hear my husband. He doesn't speak to me. And some people always say, oh, I don't hear him or see him, other than in all the things we had together. But there are butterflies that are flying around me, and he loved butterflies. And I always say, well, if that's you, Bill, hello, because energy has to go somewhere. Who knows how you come back or what you do? But getting off that, I want to go back to the fascination of your book. I found that John Mackenzie, I knew him. Your development of the character was extraordinary. And a lot of people have very, very good novels. It's very good, but you don't really know who that person is, the characters. Mm-hmm. You really have a character there. I mean, mm-hmm. He was sexy. He was good.
But he also had a very difficult upbringing, and he has a lot of recurring nightmares. Now, I was able to build the character because my background is as a psychologist, so I understand how to develop personality and characters and conflict. So it made the character of John Mackenzie more real, more whole. with all of his power and all of his wealth, he's still some part of him is a frightened little boy because of what occurred years ago, which he doesn't understand. He keeps having these regression dreams, and that's one of the motivations for him to go on this odyssey, this journey, to find out who really am I. And he goes to France and to Israel, and he winds up, I won't tell you much more about it, but he winds up toward the end in Australia, in a very mystical place in the middle of the desert called, the natives call it Uluhu, which is 1,000-foot high monolith, which the Aborigines have worshipped for many years and believe that it's very sacred. And the climax of that book 1 takes place right there. I did not go to Australia, but I am determined to get there and see this place that I have researched but have not stepped foot in.
Oh, you're an amazing person. I love this. So now I'm thinking to myself, this poor guy thinking about John Mackenzie, what are you going to do after the silence? I mean, can we have I don't know what a 4 and 5 book, it's not called trilogy. What are there other, well, people do that. You know, that's, a lot of people take a character and just keep moving them along. We know that.
Well,
but it is a good character. I hate to see him die.
I could write a sequence. Well, yeah. What happened, right. After John Mackenzie, what happens after him? Because at the end of that book, he is married, his wife is pregnant, and there could be, the next generation.
Right. I don't
but
know.
It took me 6 years to write this, and I'm exhausted, frankly. So I'm taking a little break from it. But I have 2 more projects in mind that are going to come about. It has nothing to do actually with this. One is a children's book called Seal Your Seal and the Nose Too Small. Now, I worked in the field of special education as a psychologist, and I know an awful lot about children with disabilities, and this is about a child. It's not a child. I made the seal with a nose too small, and she's going to get thrown out of the circus, and et cetera, et cetera. But that's already in the works. And the next one, which is completely different, is a murder mystery, and I'm hooking up with a homicide detective that I know. And because I don't know anything about homicide detectives, and we're going to work on this next one, which also comes out of my work in the field of special education psychology. So that's going to be kind of fun. And I can tell you, it's a very contemporary theme.
See, this is what we keep talking about. As one ages, instead of it getting worse, it should get better. That's what we're seeing with Monty. So Monty Helfgott.
Yes.
Helfgott.
Which in the name itself is interesting in related to this, because the word, the name Helfgott means God's helper. Helf, G-O-T-T in German is Gott, and H-E-L-F is to help. So I wonder, am I God's helper in some way? I don't know.
No, but, and the other thing is his covers are beautiful. They're very exciting. Your book 3 cover, that really is gorgeous. But and I asked him who's doing his covers, because they're really wonderful.
A fantastic graphic artist by the name of John Wyman, W-E-I-M-I-N. He lives in Randolph, New Jersey, and we've become friends. And he developed these front covers. And, sometimes you pick up a book and by the cover you purchase it. So he was phenomenal in reading the script and then coming up with the covers for all 3 of the books. And I owe a lot to John.
Well, they're beautiful. And the time we have left, do talk about your little thing that you're doing with video. I think that's a wonderful thing. People may want to get in touch with you. So what I want to do is give your email address out. Sure. I think that's really important. And then people can contact you. Be sure, though, to come to the Boomer Expo.
I will be there.
You'll be able to meet him. And so the way to get in touch with Monty is, let's give you his. I'm not going to give you his phone. I'm going to give you his.
The email.
I'll give you the email. So you have to write this down. Remember, this is Pencil Talk Radio, and we'll do this slowly. So it's Doc, D-O-C, Monty, M-O-N-T-Y, 1, O-N-E, 203. I'll do that again. DocMonty1, 203 at gmail.com. We'll do that one more time. DocMontyOne 203 at gmail.com. The reason you're going to want to do that is because he's going to be telling you something right now you may want to participate in. And remember the name of his books, all three. It is The Silence. The Silence. That's what they are. The Silence.
Right. Books 1, 2, and 3. I call it the trilogy.
The trilogy,
but
right.
But being a writer and moving down here to a gated community in Florida, I didn't want to spend time just playing golf, tennis, etc. So I established a new club called the Memoir Writers Club for people who want to write their memoirs and never knew how to do it, never had the opportunity. But everyone I speak to said, oh, that's great. I really want to do this. So this is starting up in the fall, and connected to it is an interview studio that I am establishing where people will come in and tell their story, and their descendants can hear their voice, see their faces, and hear their story, so that everyone who comes together with me in my production will have both a book and a DVD for posterity.
Good for you. That's lovely. And so people, and where do you actually live?
I'm in Boynton Beach, Florida.
Okay, so people will, if they want to get in touch with you and they don't have your email address, and they could go to Amazon and buy The Silence, but that still may not get you. You may have to wind up having a phone, a business phone or something, because or a website. You don't have a website?
I do have a website.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
yeah,
you
website.
Had. I saw
it's
your
just
website.
montyhelfgott.com, and you'll see that there was a studio interview that was done a few years ago, and a lot of other information about my books. So that is my website.
Right. So unfortunately, I didn't have the website written down here, but so it's Monty Helf, and it's HELFGOTT.com.
That's it.
Okay,
and it'll
go
come
on
up
there, and you'll be able to see it. So that'll be very good. Okay, well, let's. I want to go back to Mackenzie a minute. I guess the only thing for me, because I love stories, I always felt that there had to be more love. I mean, I know, and I don't want to talk about the book, so people have to read it, but there were some females in it in a different capacity. But
absolutely,
I wanted him to have one great, wonderful love, and to
John Mackenzie is in love with Rachel Twersky, but they're kind of they're apart, because when you read the book, you'll find out that she went through a very traumatic situation with the sudden death of her fiancé, and then John Mackenzie comes on the scene, but they do hook up maybe in book 4, but in the other books, you'll see his father, whose name is Arik. Arik has a wonderful, passionate relationship with a woman that he meets in the Shtetl, which is the small village in Eastern Europe. And her name is Mariah Zwick. So that you get a lot more sexy romance in the book 2 and book 3. So
that's
you can look forward. His father is Arik, and then his grandfather, thing just ran out of my head, but he also has a wonderful relationship with someone that he meets.
That's great. So I have to read number 2 and 3, don't I?
You'll find out a lot more about why he looks the way he looks and what happens, all of those things.
And the books are not that large, so you can get through them pretty easily.
It's a fast read. It's a page turner. You won't want to put him down.
I know it is. It is so good. So be sure to it's so easy to remember the name of this book. It's called The Silence. You'll want to start out with number 1, and then you'll go with number 2, and then number 3. And be sure, though, to read the July issue. We did it as the book of the month. You'll be able to see it on the cover. And you'll also be able to read what I wrote about it. I was fascinated with this. I read a lot of things, but this one really got me. I couldn't put it down, and I didn't know it was a trilogy. So we're happy that you're...
I just want to mention
Yes.
one thing to your audience. When you want to purchase it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, you have to punch in The Silence and then my name, because there are too many titles with silence, like Silence of the Lambs, Silence of this and that. So The Silence and then Monty Helfgott will come right up.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad you told us that. And be sure to come over to the book, see the book fair. We have one booth, and we will have the books there. And Monty isn't going to hang around there all the time, but maybe you'll find him walking around and doing a lot of other things there. But are you going to wear your white? I love you in white.
Yes.
This is almost like you almost remind me of Key West.
Yes.
That's what
I
you're
actually,
doing.
I didn't wear my Panama hat,
That's
which
what
I have, and I've got these blue tinted sunglasses. That's where you'll know me, with my
Okay.
Panama hat.
Okay, we got it. Well, thanks,
Okay.
everybody.